right, hello there, thrill seekers. And that was a little snippet of a song called Samantha. That was the closest thing that my band Dementia 13 ever had to a hit song. It was played on college radio a little bit in the late 80s when it was new. It was from an album called Disturb the Air, which you can still find on Discogs and places like that. And the video is actually a video of Dementia 13, the band, with Dave Swanson on drums and Joe Nofziger on bass. Actually, he's playing Chapman Stick in that video. Mixed in with some flowers, but the music was actually newly recorded by me. So I want to talk about an email that I got just the other day. And here it goes. I've been sitting Zazen daily for almost 2 years. One thing I find myself getting hung up on is making a distinction between letting go and being passive. When I'm sitting, and during everyday life as well, thoughts and feelings will flood my mind that deal with matters I would consider to be important, pressing, or even urgent. When this occurs, I find myself more or less telling myself, this doesn't matter, in order to facilitate the letting go. Although doing this does sometimes allow me to let go of these thoughts in the moment, there's part of me that feels like I'm just being passive and pretending like those thoughts don't matter in order to escape from having to deal with the thoughts about them. In short, it's almost as though I'm equating letting go with pretending that thoughts about important things don't matter. So that was the question, and then there's a follow-up, and I'm going to get to the follow-up. But my initial response to this question was that, yeah, I've dealt with the same thing because I've been doing Zazen daily for almost 40, God, was it 40 years? 30 years for sure, since the late 80s. Is that 40? Oh, Jesus Christ. It might be 40. Anyway, it's been a long time that I've been doing Zazen. So I've gone through this stuff myself, and yeah, I know the feeling of feeling like, oh no, I don't want to let these go, and I might be letting go of something important. But what I've seen in kind of just being honest about my own thoughts is most of them are just nonsense. It's just stuff that just bubbles up from the subconscious. The best expression I ever found, I think it's Kosho Uchiyama who said this. He said, thoughts are like the secretion of your brain, the same way stomach juice is the secretion of your stomach. And I love that analogy because your stomach is in there, well, you can't see me, but I'm pointing to my stomach. Your stomach is in there just secreting stomach juices all day long, doing what it does, digesting the food that you ate and doing the stuff that it does. And you don't pay a lot of attention to it. You just let it get on with its business. But when it comes to thought, we kind of get in there and try to figure it out and manipulate it and work with it and stuff, and we don't just let it go. And what the Zen advice is to just let it go the same way you let your stomach go. So it doesn't mean you're trying to shut it down. A lot of people get the idea, and I'm one of those people when I first started this practice, a lot of people get the idea that the object of the game is to shut it down. In fact, there's a lot of meditation systems out there. You can see them all over YouTube and the internet if you want. That'll tell you ways to shut down your thoughts and try to make them stop. But the idea isn't to make them stop. The idea is to just let them go. Let them do their thing. Let them do the thing the same way you let your stomach do its thing, the way you let your intestines do your thing, your kidneys, your lungs, your heart, your whatever other organs in your body are doing your thing. You let your brain do its thing just the same way, without paying a lot of conscious attention. And it seems, when you first start, at least did for me, that this is impossible because conscious attention and thought seem to be the same thing. But if you work with the practice for a little while, I don't think it usually takes that long. You start to notice that conscious attention and thought are not the same thing at all. Thought can just go on without conscious attention attending to it. Now, I want to get to the follow-up question because I thought the follow-up question to this guy's question was pretty interesting too. So here's the follow-up question. I feel like I endure a lot of torment in my attempt to filter important thoughts from less important thoughts. Thoughts constantly present themselves as problems that I feel an urgency to solve, and as soon as I solve one thought problem, another one pops up. A lot of these thought problems take the form of imagined scenarios that I might encounter at work or during the day, and it's like my mind compels me to pretend solve these thought problems, with the assumption that my stress will be relieved if I do. But like I said, these things are like whack-a-mole. Slam the mallet on one and up pops another. It does seem that a lot of my stress is worsened by the assumption that the thoughts I have are actually important and worthy of engagement. And yeah, that's a thing. That sort of imagined conversation scenario or thing I'm going to have to deal with in the future scenario is one of the tricks the mind plays. Now, reading this got me thinking about something that I noticed. It took me years of Zazen before I noticed this. And once I noticed it, I was like, whoa, that's an interesting thing. And it's this. I was sitting one day and I saw my brain. I'd gotten enough detachment from, the sort of paying attention to what the brain was doing and just kind of letting it go the way the stomach does, stomach juices, the thing I just said a few minutes ago, that I could see it a little bit more objectively, and I saw the brain go into problem-solving mode without any actual problem to solve. It was kind of interesting. The brain just starts going problem-solving mode. Solve a problem, solve a problem, solve a problem. And there's no specific problem there. So the brain starts to go into, I'm going to solve a problem, and then it starts looking around for a problem to solve. So you think, if you're me, and you've been doing this for years, you think that first you come up with the problem, and then you're trying to solve it. But what's really going on, at least a lot of the time, maybe most of the time, is that the brain is going into problem-solving mode, and then it's finding something that it wants to solve. It's like, oh, what Angela said to me last night, and I better think of what I'm going to say to her next time I see her. Woo! And then that goes into the problem-solving machine. Or what I think about climate change. Woo! That goes into the problem-solving machine. And it just works itself out, but they're not. It's a separate thing. The thing that you're trying to solve is just added later on into the process. So the problem-solving machine is going, and then it's looking for something to solve. The other thing I noticed is that imaginary conversation thing used to go on a lot for me during Zazen, like the conversation I was going to have with sometimes my Zen teacher, often my Zen teacher, sometimes somebody at work, sometimes a friend, whatever. And I'd run through these conversations, important conversations that I was going to have with somebody. And as I started observing what really happened is I never had those conversations. Never had those conversations. On the very rare occasions when I would kind of work myself up with something that I was gonna definitely have to say to that person, and then I said the thing that I'd been thinking of, the best it would do after maybe hours of ruminating on the thing I was going to say is I'd get a couple of sentences out based on what I thought I was going to say, and then then a response comes, and then you have to come up with something new, or the thing you thought you were going to say just doesn't come out right. It doesn't matter anyway, or you just the moment has changed and it's inappropriate, but you say it anyway and it's stupid. All these other things happen, and I just kind of, after a while, I gave up on that. Now, of course, if you're, for example, you're you're in a company and you're going to have a meeting with somebody later on, and you have to work through the points you're going to have to bring up at the meeting. Of course, you got to think those through. And I'm a writer. I write books for a living. So I have to think about what I'm going to say in chapter 4 of the book, and I got to think through the points I'm going to say. Sometimes you have to plan those things out. Sometimes it might be important to kind of get your story straight or whatever you want to say. On very rare occasions that might happen for a conversation, but really, at least I was going to say if you do it, let's turn it back on me. Whenever I have done that, almost never have any of the conversations I've worked through in my head turned out to be conversations I've really had. Because everything changes by the time you come to the point of actually having the conversation. Like I said, things have changed, or the words you thought were going to sound brilliant sound stupid. All these kind of things happen, and for the most part, I've found that it's just easier to just not even deal with it. The same thing happens to me, even now after 40 years of Zazen, these same things come up. It doesn't change that much in terms of what your brain does. It just kind of ruminates. It's got these sort of karmic things. That's how the Buddhists would put it. It's got these, psychologists would probably put it another way, these functions that it's going to go through, and it's got these wheels that are going to turn. That's going to happen, and it probably just goes through your whole life. What does change, though, with practice is you learn to be able to just kind of ignore it. And to the extent that you ignore it, and to the extent that you don't give it more energy when you don't have to give it any energy, it's sort of like, a kid who's screaming for attention. Let's say the kid doesn't really need that much attention. It's one of these attention-seeking kids, not a kid who's really in trouble. And you just ignore the kid until the kid just shuts up and finds something else to do. It's like that. Your brain is like that. It'll just be like, oh, he's not listening to me anymore. Okay, I'll just shut up now. It gets like that. It just kind of gives up. And if you keep ignoring it for years and years and years, it gets a lot quieter in there. And I can tell you from my own lived experience that a quieter brain is a nice thing. It's really nice to have the brain quiet down a lot more than it had been in the past. But I don't think you ever get to the point, I don't know if anybody ever gets to the point where it's just shing, just complete blank. I think Kodo Sawaki is the one who said the only time your mind is a complete blank is when you're dead. So I think that's probably the way it is. So don't worry about trying to find that complete space of complete and utter silence in your practice where nothing is going on. I think a lot of people get frustrated in their zazen because they never find that place where it's just not happening at all. But you can get to the point where you just ignore it and it just goes on its own, and you don't worry about it too much, and it doesn't become a problem, and it doesn't really matter that much. So that's the thing. So watch it. If you're doing zazen, if you're out there and you're one of the people who's actually doing the practice, watch that problem solving thing and watch how the wheels start spinning and looking for a problem to solve. Sometimes, maybe in my case, I've noticed it's almost all the time before there's a problem to solve. They're looking for a problem. I've seen my brain go into problem-solving mode, going, like full-on problem-solving mode with no problem. And I go, wait a minute. I'm working hard on this problem, and there's nothing. There's no problem. There's no problem to solve. Why don't I just stop just doing that? Just let that go. So there you go. There's your answer. I don't think it's passive. I don't think there's any risk of missing anything important. most of your thoughts, at least let's turn this back around on me again. Most of my thoughts I've seen since working with this practice for years, most of them are just unimportant. They don't matter. Nothing's going on. It's nothing worth chasing down. It's just secretions, like the secretions of my stomach. It's just digesting. And the more that you put in there, the more you're going to have to digest. One of the things I've learned to do, though sometimes I fall off the wagon, is in the morning, if you're doing Zazen in the morning, don't look at any social media before you do your Zazen. Don't look at anything that you don't have to before you do your Zazen, because the more you put in the brain, the more the brain is going to have to digest. It's going to be working on that stuff, even if it doesn't feel like it. It's just going to be like churning that stuff around. So just let that go. And that's usually the cause of people's Zazen being, cattywampus and upset and all this stuff, is because they put a lot in there before they started practicing. So it doesn't just stop the minute you sit down. Don't expect that. Anyway, there you go. There's your answer about passivity versus, letting go. So if you want more information or more advice on that, you can send me emails at bw@hardcorezen.info. That's where you can reach me. And if you want to send me a donation, you can send a donation to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts. Those are my main and usually only ways of making a living, so I appreciate your support. But as always, this is offered for free, so you don't gotta support me if you don't want to support me. We will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. What are we gonna do today, Ziggy? Go for a walk later on? You wanna do that? Go for a walk, eat some food? Yeah, that'd be fun. Alright, for now I'm going to edit the video. We'll see you later, Ziggy. Alright? Bye. What are you looking at? Where the sea and the sand
in the